The so-called Dark Enlightenment, that festering reactionary cesspool of anti-democratic, elitist and nihilistic ideologies, has been exposed for the hollow, cowardly doctrine it is. Its proponents, who once believed they could drag humanity back into the mire of authoritarianism, are now witnessing the literal and metaphorical dismemberment of their twisted worldview on the battlefields of Ukraine and in the shifting political landscapes across the globe. Let's start with Ukraine, where the fantasies of centralized, unassailable power are being torn to shreds by a nation that refuses to kneel. Putin, the darling autocrat of the Dark Enlightenment, is watching his grand ambitions unravel as Ukrainian forces push further into Russian territory, smashing the myth of Russian invincibility. The so-called strongman ideology, which these neo-reactionary idiots worship, is crumbling as Putin's forces, bloated with corruption and incompetence, flail helplessly against a nation driven by the very democratic and liberal values this moribund philosophy despises. Every village liberated, every Russian retreat is not just a military victory, it is a direct repudiation of the Dark Enlightenment's core tenet. That power, concentrated in the hands of a few superior individuals, is the natural order of things. Ukraine is demonstrating, with blood and iron, that this ideology is nothing but a sick joke, a delusion held by those too cowardly to face a world where people demand freedom, justice and equality. The dismemberment of Russian forces is a metaphor for the dismemberment of the Dark Enlightenment itself, as its blood-soaked dreams are shattered by the resolve of free people. Meanwhile, back in the United States, the domestic front of the Dark Enlightenment is in full retreat. Kamala Harris, a symbol of everything these reactionary morons hate, intelligence, competence, and a commitment to democratic governance, is surging ahead in the polls, leaving Donald Trump, the movement's orange-tinted messiah, floundering in her wake. The same electorate that was once seduced by Trump's demagoguery is now recoiling from the stench of corruption, incompetence, and fascist tendencies that his presidency unleashed. Harris's rise is not just a political shift. It is the toppling of the Dark Enlightenment's domestic altar. The so-called intellectuals who backed Trump as the herald of a new authoritarian age are now choking on the ashes of their failed ideology. They dreamed of a return to an imagined past, where hierarchies were rigid and the masses knew their place. Instead, they are watching in horror as their golden idol crumbles under the weight of its own lies and failures. Trump's fall, symbolized by Harris's ascendancy, is the final nail in the coffin for the Dark Enlightenment's American ambitions. The Dark Enlightenment is not just dying, it is being torn apart limb by limb, its grotesque ideas exposed for the cowardice they represent. Its vision of a world ruled by a self-proclaimed elite, free from the constraints of democracy and morality, is being ground into the dirt by the boots of Ukrainian soldiers and the ballots of American voters. This pathetic fantasy, which thrived on the Internet's darkest corners, has found itself dragged into the light, and like a vampire it is shriveling away under the scrutiny. The collapse of Putin's war machine and Trump's political future marks the definitive end of the Dark Enlightenment's delusions. Let its disciples scatter to the winds, nursing their bruised egos and shattered dreams as the world marches forward free of their toxic influence.